He's going to talk about AI agent management, the responsible path to hyperproductivity with AI agents. Can we please welcome to the stage the Senior VP and GM of AI and Platform, should get this right, Boomi, apologies, Mr. Chris Hallenbach.
It's great to be back in Singapore. I think it was before the pandemic that I got to be here on stage before. So it is fantastic to get to see the city again. I'm here to talk about responsible hyperproductivity using agents and how we can actually begin to do this at scale. I'm going to talk about some things that are in. We actually have a fully generally available product that people are using today. I also want to be able to talk a roadmap, so I have to have this slide, the lawyers say. We are moving from a period right now where we've gone through the last decade and we really talked about digital transformation. How do we actually build end-to-end processes that are fully interconnected, even with different applications? We began to look at how we can digitize the interaction with our customers, but also build our processes not from our internal out perspective, but from the outside in, which also led to brand new channels and very innovative ways of working with our customers. And that's been fantastic. But now we're beginning to transition. We're beginning, because that phase is kind of over and actually been done well, and now we're beginning to say, how can I actually leverage agentic? How can I start to look at these non-deterministic processes and begin to do those and get away from hard-coded, rigid approaches? This isn't just marketing, it's actually what the data says. The data comes in, and right now you see 73% of companies thinking that AI agents are going to be the biggest game changer in their business. Not top 5, not this, the biggest change that is happening right now. I think it's interesting that McKinsey just came out with a report targeted at CEOs, saying this is now that level of a topic, you need to care. What's interesting though, and I'm sure many people in this audience have had the same result, we speak to the business, they're not ready. They're like, I actually don't trust agents. I don't understand the security. I don't understand non-determinism. I like my rigid processes, even though they're not really being honest with themselves that many of these have humans involved in them, and humans are inherently non-deterministic. Now, why Boomi exists is actually to take that 2% and bring that up to 100%. How do we actually build trust in agentic workflows? Now, like any enterprise software company out there, you either know them to death and you've heard about them all the time, or you don't know them. Boomi's actually been around for a while. You might have seen the latest Gartner Magic Quadrant Integration Platform as a Service. We're in the top right-hand corner. We're the only companies that have been there for 11 years straight. Within that, we have over 170,000 runtimes of Boomi running out in our SaaS platform, and it runs in managed clouds, private clouds, all the way down to on-prem, all seamlessly. We also have many different data capabilities, including master data management, which becomes key to agentic when we think of reference data, with over 8.7 billion records added annually. And I think more importantly, 3.6 trillion messages are being processed across our framework seamlessly every year. So we have tremendous reach and power of looking at workflows, looking at automations, looking at integrations, which is where we talk about now driving agentic. And this is why Boomi. Now, Boomi's not new to this at all, actually. So we built and started using classical machine learning in our platform starting back in 2010, and using those approaches to actually make it easier to build integrations. But over the last 2 years, we've been driving Gen AI directly into the platform to make it easier for people to do things like build integrations, so that I can define 2 endpoints and it will pull on our history of over 300 million integrations built on our platform and apply that to your unique situation and make recommendations. We take 80% of the time out of building all the documentation required. We can point at an API and automatically scrub through the documentation, gen the YAML, and then create the endpoint for you to start extracting data and putting into things like Snowflake and Databricks, and doing that automatically and generating all the documentation on your behalf. Within this, we have over 39,000 agents currently in production in our system for our customer base. We also use it extensively through Boomi ourselves, to be honest. It uses everything from our sales department, finance group, marketing, etc. We agentify everything in our company. What this led us to do, though, in hearing from customers, was that yes, we love having AI in Boomi to make Boomi easier to use. I now want to use it in my own processes to do this. And for that, we have Agent Studio, which is generally available today. Not early access, not anything like that. Everything I'm talking about here today is generally available, unless, of course, I talk about roadmap. What we designed the system first is to make it easier to design agents with confidence. We're great. Use Bedrock, build it there, grab a Salesforce agent, all for it. But there are times where I want to build an agent seamlessly and easily in under 5 minutes on a platform and be able to deploy that. Much more straightforward use cases where I don't need to train it on data. I simply want to actually use a Gen AI agent and deploy it seamlessly. Talk about that. The thing that is big, though, that we keep hearing now in the last week, everyone's talking about agentic mesh, is the ability to actually have complete governance. Can I have a control plane that looks not only at the agents I've built with a platform like Boomi, but with all my different platforms in a common control plane with full management, observability, and governance, including the audit logs that I need to actually see that and show to auditors, so when I'm doing regulated processes, I'm okay. So people are talking about the need for this. Boomi does this today. And of course, though, that's all cool, but how do I unleash that energy? I need to be able to put it into a workflow, into an automation, into a custom application. We do that as well. So step back and think about what goes into an agent. Because many people, sure, if you're an engineer, you do this and you think about it, but for everybody else, to me, I think about a Gen AI agent, and I like to think of it as potential energy, and actually relatively low potential energy. And now I need to give that thing context. Tell me about the customer. Tell me how important they are, how many years they've worked with me. Tell me then about how their purchase history, all of that. Tell me about the current open service tickets they have with us. Now I've risen that agent up and given it huge amounts of potential energy. But now I actually want to unleash that as kinetic energy. How do you do that? Well, I need to be able to take that and actually drop it into an automation, drop it into an integration, expose it as an API so that I can tie it into the rest of my software stack, or build it out into a custom app. This is what Boomi allows in the platform. Not only building up and having all those connections, but the ability to then unleash that and do these things in less than an hour. So number one, how do I build and design agents with confidence? You can, of course, like I said, build these things you build them over in Bedrock if you're going to do your own training. That's not what we do. But if I'm just building a straightforward agent where I want to give it a goal, using a classical model like something from Anthropic or OpenAI, and I want to gen that out, I need to have a very simple builder to do this. One that allows me to go through, define the profile, define the reasoning and the tasks. What are those steps? Then linking in the tools to provide all of that context and history to that task to make it intelligent. Obviously providing all the guardrails and automatically doing stuff like protecting you against prompt injection, and then letting me do attributes and then do full QA and review of that agent before I deploy it, including full traceability of all the tools coming in. And doing this with no code. That means I don't need a specialized team that works for weeks building something bespoke. I can actually do this by the teams working close to the business. I can put this in the product teams and have them be fully self-sufficient and do revisions of this as often as they like, as they want to build out new versions. Now I talk about governance. We then have Agent Control Tower, which here you see automatically integrates with Amazon Bedrock. I should have mentioned back here, we are only one of 5 companies that have passed the security certifications to type into Amazon Q-Index I can actually bring in context directly in. We're a very close partner with Amazon. I can then come back here though and do govern. I can go directly into Bedrock and bring all their agents in. I'll be announcing several more platforms in the coming weeks from the largest providers that automatically bring them in, but of course you can register any agent manually directly into the system. I then have the ability to see complete observability on how it's being consumed, how many tokens, I can do forecasting on that usage, I can see their performance metrics, response times, dig into their tools and see how they're performing throughout. But as I get into more and more agents, and I'm concerned with agentic sprawl, I can't do that for every tool. So of course we then bring in anomaly detection. So we're automatically finding what you need to hunt down and look at, and then make decisions. Do I maybe need to turn off this agent, which I can also do directly from within the platform. So, and then we get into getting into immutable logs, which actually comes out very shortly in the platform that we have, where I can actually, so for fully regulated processes, I have those audit logs that are needed by like the EU AI Act, and for just generally by your auditors if they come check out things in like finance. And lastly, we get into how do I then unleash that energy kinetically, and that's where I can drop it in. Here you can see where somebody was in a workflow and they had a code block that was completely deterministic and suboptimal and didn't actually really meet all my needs. And here I've built an agent, and I'm just going to click on agent and drop it into that workflow, instantly deployed. I do that in dev, I'm happy, click transport, and it's in production. This is production software today, not a demo, not a thought, built here today. Coming out very shortly in a few weeks, we also have complete MCP support, not only built into the agent building, but also within our API management. We're one of the biggest API management companies out there with a complete API control plane, and in there we'll also give the full ability for you to build and take your individual APIs, also taking in your data pipelines, your events, and exposing those out automatically internally as MCP servers. So a complete end-to-end entire platform for agentic. So as we start to talk about why Boomi, I've talked about universal governance. We talk to CIOs. They skip the agents and they go, talk to me about governance. Talk to me about actually your audit logs and other components. I've put production algorithms into production in finance and gone through the auditors. We already understand the requirements, and that's what we built into Boomi. We've built it for thousands and thousands of agents, and how do I manage all those agents at scale, which is something we learned when we had the API problem, and that got running away, and we realized we needed control planes. Next up is no walled gardens. Every vendor out there is trying to lock you into their platform. Build agents with me, use my platform, and then you're stuck with that individual system. We don't know who's going to be better. Today, Anthropic's got an incredible model. Then I see OpenAI. Now some of the upcoming small models that are working with, that are coming up on the industry and line of business specific are phenomenal. Or maybe I have a narrower use case and I realize I don't need to use a big, large model like something like Sonnet, and I want to drop down to Haiku. I can do that at a tenth the cost, run 20 times faster, have a better user experience. Let me swap back and forth. The problem today is when I do that, I have to recode and redo everything. Boomi makes that seamless, so I don't have to rebuild all my tools. I don't also need to build the outputs in the integration. It's just an upgrade. Now some people are saying, don't you have to reorder the prompt and redo that to have an optimized answer? And the answer is yes, we do that. You need powerful tools. I had that huge list up there, API access. They don't have to be built with Boomi. You've got Kong APIs, use Kong APIs. Bring those in, but data pipelines, database access, files, access to all those systems, all provided drag and drop in the Boomi platform when I'm building my agents. Also mentioned Amazon QIndex, and that very shortly in a few weeks we'll be releasing full MCP support. Also then, no code. We're not saying you don't need agents that you build with your own data, that you may want to build via a command line interface. Go build those inside Amazon. Go build those in LangChain. But you need to be able to manage and orchestrate those and drop them into Boomi, and now I have that full governance platform so that I can have observability and management and governance of those systems built in. So with that, I'd like to thank you all. What I'd like to do is introduce you. We're in a booth right over there. We hope you stop by. If you see one of the lovely women in the pink shirts, they can give you cards. We have some great giveaways. If you do that, you can come by and take your pick. So anyways, thank you very much for coming. I appreciate your time.